We're ready to record. Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. We're very excited to have two guest speakers come today to talk to us for our Female Role Model series. Our Female Role Model series really started several years ago here at the CARE office, where we wanted to acknowledge staff that staff that could share their story, their lived experience within Awareness Month. So we typically do female role models on Cultural Awareness Month in regards to Black History Month. We also do it during Asian Pacific Islander Awareness Month. And then we have other Identity Awareness Months where we invite individuals from our staff here to come and talk about their lived experience, to give individuals, students, an opportunity to know how staff navigate their work, their careers, and also knowing that their cultural presence is something that they take into their careers. And so it's really important for us to acknowledge that we have a lot of phenomenal staff that are doing great work. And so this is an opportunity for you all to get to know them a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and read their bios, and in order for us to be able to get to know them a little bit. And then we'll go ahead and have our regular specific questions that we like to do for them. So I'm going to go ahead and read the bio first. Our first person that we're going to be highlighting is going to be Kristopher. So I'm going to go ahead and share here his story. So Kristopher Greene was born in Fresno, California. Wow, this is something new. I didn't know that you were so local. So Kristopher was born in Fresno, California, and came to UC Merced to complete his BA. He majored in economics and psychology with a minor in sociology. Immediately after graduating, Kristopher went to Fresno State to complete his MA in Higher Education, Administration, and Leadership. He's passionate about student success, social justice issues, and making a difference in higher education. Kristopher supervises the customer service team at Students First Center. He also serves as the co-chair for the Staff and Faculty of Color Association at UC Merced. In his free time, he likes to travel, attend concerts, spend time with family, and try new foods and new food places. So thank you and welcome, Kristopher. I really appreciate you being here with us today. I'm gonna go ahead and actually I'm gonna switch and bring in Chanelle in order for us to hear a little bit about you. So Chanelle Reese has an MS, serves as Associate Ombudsperson at UC Merced. She previously served as the Dispute Resolution and ADR Coordinator at the Better Business Bureau of Greater Maryland and the Senior Associate for the Office of the Corporate Ombuds with the American Red Cross. Chanelle specializes in data analysis and reporting in the conflict management and dispute resolution areas. She brings experience and a proven track record of success in supporting daily operations while showcasing a natural ability to connect with individuals of diverse backgrounds, displaying concerns at different levels. She's trained in negotiation, conciliation, mediation, facilitation, and arbitration and utilities, and utilizes the tools from each dispute resolution session to effectively provide informal conflict management resources to members of the UC Merced community. So Chanelle holds a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology from Old Dominion. I can't say your overall.
Old Dominion.
One more time.
Old Dominion University.
Old Dominion University. Perfect. And a Master's of Science in Negotiation and Conflict Management from the University of Baltimore. She's a member of the American Bar Association Dispute Resolution Section and the International Ombuds Association, completing the foundations of an organizational ombuds practice training. She has completed training as a three practice circle leader and also serves as an active member of the following professional associations: the American Committees, Association Committees, IOA Conference Committee, California Caucus of College and University Ombuds Programming Committee, American Bar Association Ombuds Committee, and the American Bar Association Women in Dispute Resolutions Committee. Fun fact, she's a natural shot at hitting targets despite not having any true training. Oh, so that's a fun fact, all right. So thank you again, Chanelle. We really appreciate all that you've done and all that you bring to our campus. So thank you. So I have a couple of questions for both of you. And so I know that we're going to have Kristopher will start us off. So what were your experiences growing up? How did your identity impact your career decisions? So I'll pass the first question over to Kristopher. So again, what were your experiences growing up? And then how did your identity impact your career decisions?
Yeah, so I grew up in Fresno, California. I did get to visit UC Merced on an Avid trip in high school, and I really fell in love with the campus. I think it helped. It did kind of remind me a lot of like the diversity that's within the Fresno community. I come from a very small family. I have a single mom, and then my grandma helped to raise me. And then from there, my mom and my grandma helped to raise my younger cousins, who are kind of like my siblings. So on one end, I'm like an only child, but also the eldest of my cousins who grew up with me in my small family. I always had a big push from my family to do well in school and strive to achieve higher education or an education. I'm a first generation college student. I remember really just falling in love with the UC Merced campus and compared to other universities maybe we were looking at. I remember coming to UC Merced in 2013, and at the time, the new building was Half Dome. It opened that August, and SSB. And so I've been working, and on campus, I started working with the Students First Center as a student employee. And I've been back at UC Merced for a little over 3.5 years now. And working there helped to push me to want to go and pursue a master's degree back home at Fresno State. But ultimately I did return to UC Merced to keep working. And I would say identity-wise, my family would always push educational opportunities to really showcase Black history to me and my cousins, and wanting to show us, like, for example, like taking us to traveling to see Black history or museums and things like that that really resonate with our culture.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Kristopher. I appreciate it. So Chanelle, same question. What were your experiences growing up? And then how did your identity impact your career decisions?
So I'm originally from Michigan. And then, so I was in Michigan until about 7 years old full time. My father got an opportunity to move us south to Virginia at the age of 7, and I stayed there until I graduated high school. That experience, my experience as a family unit, is that I only grew up with the 4 of them. So I don't know what it's like to go over to grandmother's house every weekend. I didn't grow up with cousins. All I had was my mom and my dad and my brother. And so because of that, it made us extremely close, despite being separated from everyone else. And so that taught me that I'm able to love other people from a distance. And it also taught me that I'm able to rely on those 3 people to propel me forward in what I'm trying to accomplish. Because as the youngest of an older brother, I got to watch 3 people do everything that I wanted to do and do it successfully. So I had the blueprint, and there was no excuse for me not to succeed. And I watched them do it from nothing. My parents had nothing. And now, arguably, you can say they have everything. And so it comes from hard work. And so that shaped my work ethic. I started, as a kid, I purposely put myself in situations to educate myself. I would go and I would play in the rough neighborhoods, and I would go volunteer at schools and churches, but then I would also go to the other side, the more wealthy side, because of my brain and the education that I had. And I would get that type of education to go back and say, okay, peers, this is how you make it out. If I'm able to do it, you're able to do it. You just have to develop a plan. So I got my first job at 15. My mom went down to a restaurant and said, you need to hire my daughter. Here's why. Here's all the skill sets that she has. And so I learned to do my taxes at 10 years old. I started learning all about algebra and calculus and all that stuff. So while all the kids were out there playing, I would go play, and then I would come home and I would study, because I know my biggest asset was my brain. That's the only way I'm going to be able to get forward. So to move that into my identity, how it impacted my career decision, I knew that I was going to have to outwork everyone. I have obviously a skin color that I can't change, and I have a very youthful face. Even now, I'm pretty sure I can still walk into a high school class and sit down and take an exam. But I'm 33 years old, and so people don't realize the wisdom that I have until I open my mouth and I talk about what I've been through. And so I use that not as a woe is me, things are going to be harder, but I use that to say, if I made it to this level, I made it here because I did everything possible to succeed. And so I use that as motivation with my career decision. So I'm not here by mistake. I'm here because I worked for it. I made a plan, and anything that was a threat to my success, whether it's friends, family, eliminated, because nothing was more important than me succeeding, so I can show other people it can be done, no matter what you look like and whatever your original circumstances are.
Thank you, Chanelle. I appreciate it. And I think it's important, that there's a purpose, right? You were very strategic in your career. So that's something that I think is helpful for some of the students that are going to be viewing this, because I think many of them sometimes don't think about that, the strategy, right? And about being purposeful. So that's helpful for them. So coming up with our next question, and I'll pass it over to Kristopher, is how has your culture or your identity shaped your career and experience now, particularly in higher education?
Yeah, so I would say from receiving my bachelor's and also my master's, and of course working in higher education and receiving and being in that for a couple years, I would say I recognize these spaces are normal, or were not created for someone like myself, an African American male. Higher education was really created for and exclusive to wealthy white Christian men. So navigating that, especially as a first gen student, was especially challenging, I would say. Kind of similar to Chanelle, I've had a lot of times of imposter syndrome and like feeling like, am I doing well, or do I really deserve like maybe the position or even the educate or the school that I'm in. And over time my confidence has gotten a lot better to say like the answer to that would be yes, like I do deserve that. And that answer to everyone else should also be, yes, don't doubt yourself, don't count yourself out, trust in your abilities, and you can do whatever you want to do. I do remember maybe like month 2 or 3 of me being back at UC Merced, having an African American student come up to me and say that it was great to see someone who looks like him in a staff role on campus, because there really isn't a lot of us. And so that just really sticks with me so often. And I really want to, of course, continue to help make that experience better for others across campus.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that, because I think one of the things is that oftentimes we take for granted sometimes the diversity that can be here to some extent, but when we really break it down more, we're not as diverse because of in regards to having African American or Black staff members, faculty members, even students. So I'm glad that the representation is important, and that's a great story to share. Also, the fact that a student came up to you and shared that information, because representation does matter, and especially in higher education. And so thank you for being here and for sharing that story, because I think it will go ahead and touch other folks, and they'll have an opportunity to get to know you a little bit more with this interview. So thank you. I'm going to go ahead and bring in Chanelle for that same question. So if you can share, how has your culture or your identity shaped your career and experiences in higher education?
I think in one word, I would say awareness of what's going on around me. I think something interesting that happened to me when I was here is that, within the first few months, I got a lot of emails, not specifically asking for like Ombud services, but just saying, I'm so excited that you're here. I'm so excited there's someone that looks like me that's here. And now I've had people specifically come to the office because of that, not identifying as Black or American, but just anyone of a person of color. They're like, I'm so happy you're here, because now I feel like I have someone who I can relate to more. And I can say for certain that because of my diverse background and all the situations that I've either ended up with through circumstance or that I purposely put myself in to educate myself to be better and well-rounded, I haven't met yet one person that I couldn't relate to. And I think that's what makes me successful as an ombuds, because there's always something I can pull from based upon what I'm hearing from people. And so that awareness, knowing the work ethic, being able to relate to people, whether I can't verbally say it, but relating to people when they come to me with what they're going through. I've seen it all, I've done it all, I've experienced it myself. I'm sure I'll have some stories for you later on with some of these other questions, but it really helps me provide the support within my role and even outside my role about how we all can be better in higher education.
Thank you, Chanelle. It's it's something that right now, when I'm thinking about it, even if it's staff, so you're more likely to see staff. And so even staff, like how you mentioned, the experience that Kristopher had in regards to a student, but knowing that also staff need representation as well. And so that's something that I think oftentimes, again, we overlook, but it's something that's significant at all levels. We have to have genuine representation. That's critical. So thank you for sharing that. So I'm gonna go ahead and move us to the next questions. And I know that someone you brought on the term imposter syndrome, and there's some message here of someone agreeing in regards to 100% agree and feel when it comes to imposter syndrome. So I'm glad, Kristopher, that you were able to share that information, kind of talked about imposter syndrome, because I think that's in general a term that some folks don't feel like they want to take it on, because they feel that might be vulnerability and so forth. But I'm glad that we're talking about it, or that you shared about it right now. I think it's important, which kind of comes back to this next question, which is, can you share how you deal with challenges or discrimination, and how do you overcome them? Because sometimes it's, it can be something that that you might be feeling in microaggressions, right? Or sometimes individuals have misconception or stereotypes. And then again, the intent, right, is something that we need to explore here. So can you share just how you deal with challenges or discrimination, microaggressions, and how do you overcome those?
Yeah, I would say challenges, I would try to talk them out and or try to be as outspoken as possible on them. But sometimes that could be very uncomfortable, even having that conversation. So you kind of have to be brave and have at times maybe someone you could trust or even talk it out with to go to for support and see if for advice on maybe how to approach it. I would say those types of situations, definitely approach them maybe delicately, and even with the potentially even sharing of resources that could help maybe prevent it in the future, to educate. Um, I would definitely lean on others to try to feel empowered to have that conversation, because it could be uncomfortable, and needing to be brave to kind of have that type of talk at times.
Thank you. And then anything in regards to how to navigate microaggressions or anything discriminatory? Or would you use the same approach?
Kind of same approach, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm gonna pass it on to Chanelle, which you said it kind of almost is a big plug for you, Chanelle, in regards to your position where you said to talk about it with someone else. And so, again, just to plug, the Ombuds office is a confidential space, is somewhere where people can come and also run things by you, right? So knowing that, can you share, how do you deal with challenges? And I know this is a little bit of a mouthful of a question. So how do you deal with challenges? And then if you can touch on discrimination or microaggressions, and then how do you overcome those?
Yeah, so I'll share an interesting example because I think this will help people. So to touch on what happened when I was 15, I got that job. At 17 years old, as a senior in high school, I got my first professional job as an accountant. So because of that, I only had to go to school half a day as a senior year, right? And I had a second job. So I would go to accounting, then in the afternoon go to school, and in the evening I had a night job as a waitress. Because again, I said I wanted to experience everything. So when I'm eating food, I want to know what it's like to be a waitress. So I know how people are treated. And so that's what I did. Anyway, because I'm in and out, at that second job, my nighttime job, I was framed by my manager for stealing money. And that is when I learned at a very early age what it's like to be screwed over when you've done everything right. And that's why, one of the reasons why nothing that happens to me now, everything is like very minute, because if I can deal with that type of situation at 17 with everything else I have going on, I can literally deal with anything. And so in that situation, I learned, have evidence to support what you have done and what you haven't done. And I wasn't given the opportunity to say my side. I was accused of it because they used my login, they stole the cash, and they thought they could get away with it because I was still in the building. So they had an assumption that I still had my access on. So I went back to the computer, I pulled out my login, I proved that I was signed off. I told them to look at the security cameras and show where I was sitting at the time of it. And I provided proof that I did what I need to do, balancing the money beforehand, before I signed off. And so in that moment, that person, who was also a person of color, not my skin tone, but a person of color, apologized to me for accusing me of something before they had an opportunity to prove and see if I'd done it. And so I share that experience to say that if you feel, or if you have a thought that something might not be going your way, make sure you document everything. And as you're documenting it, make sure you start strategizing and brainstorming as you're documenting, to where if this comes up, this is how I want to handle it. So when it does happen, if it does, hopefully it doesn't, but if it does happen, you can refer back to something that you planned and say, okay, I'm not starting from scratch here. I have an idea of how I want to move, because that's where you get overwhelmed. If something happens to you and you don't have anywhere to go, and then you just sort of feel helpless. But if throughout whatever you're going through, the first thing you want to do is, I'm going to come up with a plan on how I'm going to prove this wrong, how I'm going to address this, and then come up with the pros and cons of what that looks like for each decision. Because you have to live with what you want to do next. Even recently, I feel like something happened to me that was unfair. And so I take my own advice that I would if I'm unbuzzing someone else. I came up with a plan, I brainstormed. It's just about the right strategic moment that I voice what has happened to me and why this is fair, and some things that can be prevented to happen from the future. Because you also don't want to play the victim role. So anytime you need to overcome something, try to provide a little bit of education to that person as well. Not in a condescending way, but everyone has the challenge to help make other people around them better and see things from a different perspective. If you just complain about it, you're not contributing to a better environment.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm glad that you shared that experience that happened to you, which is an unfortunate situation that happened to you at 17, because, a lot of the students that are going to be watching this video, for some of them, it might be, coming to college, first time away from home. Maybe some of them are getting their first jobs. And it's just important for them to just be aware of some of the tactics that, that you shared, some of the importance of just making sure the documentation, I think it's important, and just being aware of the fact that, sometimes your age, your background can make you vulnerable for someone to take advantage. But, that's why it's important to make sure that you're also, doing, some of the things that you did in order to advocate for yourself, right? Because we have to be advocates for ourselves. And the education piece is really critical because, we have to be able to leave a situation with some kind of knowledge for someone else, so then it doesn't happen again, right? Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And so we're gonna move, and I know that in the chat, there's a lot of comments that people are also sharing that I just wanna make sure that I read out loud. We love a winning moment. You go, Chanelle, for getting through that. So that's really important, right? Also, about, again, supporting each other. This is one of the things that this Firme Role Models really is about, building community, not just after watching this, but then so people could share this information and be able to apply it to themselves and help others. So thank you again, both, for being here. So then the next question really is going to be, what does your support system look like? Because I think professionally, I think as, individuals that are professionals, everyone needs a support system. And sometimes I think some of our students, as they're, growing and developing into their professional selves, it's important for them to understand that, what can a support system look like? So Kristopher, if you can share, what does your personal support system look like for you?
Yeah, of course. I would say definitely my family. I would say my friends who, a lot of them that I'm still in contact with now are from undergrad. So just being able to be at undergrad with them and grow into our careers together. From there, even some of my old classmates from graduate school who are also navigating their career at other institutions of higher ed. Those are great support systems for myself. Being in undergrad, I got very involved in a on-campus social fraternity. And so those were a lot of my undergrad friends who I still keep in contact with. And we definitely, keep in touch and like cheer each other on with like our little wins and our goals and help keep each other accountable. And I would say even my coworkers and my colleagues within my department, helping to be there for each other and like support each other and one another and help them or help each other reach whatever type of goals we may have. Those are my biggest support systems, I would say.
Thank you. And I'm glad that you also mentioned, support system can be family, but it could also be folks at work. And that's something that a lot of folks, unfortunately, might not have. So I'm glad that you highlighted that, because that's really important that, we try to concentrate on building support systems. They can be a variety, right? And they look different. So thank you. I'm going to pass it over to you, Chanelle. Can you share a little bit about your support system or support systems that you might have?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously my immediate support system is my mother, my brother, and my dad. That's because it's not just because they're my parents and my brother, it's because of the trust I have in the guidance that they have given me. And I've seen them overcome it and overcome things in a successful way. So when I know I'm getting advice from them or guidance, it's not necessarily coming from uh, a family member that, oh, I love you and I'm here for you. Like they're actually saying you could do this and this is why. So it's kind of like they're unbundling me a little bit. And a lot of times, especially with my mom, who is basically an older version of myself, we don't agree. And if she doesn't agree with me, she'll tell me, you could have handled that differently, and here's why. And so I have support systems that aren't, yes people and just there to say that I love you. I want to know, how can you contribute to what I'm sharing with you? And is there anything that can be done differently? Do you see a different lens on this than I do? And so outside of that immediate support system, I will say, especially because I have moved around a lot, not by choice, just because I've had to career-wise, is that I always tend to take at least one or two people that I've connected with me and make a conscious effort to keep up with them, whether I have to schedule Zoom meetings with them, whether impromptu calls are more effective. When something happens or there's something I want to talk about, I have a specific person that I will call about that. And that's based on the different connections that I've met. So I have most of my friends and mentors are twice my age. And I hear from them a lot. They're like, every time I speak with you, I learn a lot. Like you have a lot of wisdom. And that's because growing up, I wasn't hanging out with people of my age. I was hanging out with people twice my age because I wanted to take that time to learn. And you learn a lot from people that have gone through things. And my goal was to learn from other people's mistakes, not to, make my own with my peers. And so I have I still speak with all my former supervisors. I made a point to keep that relationship going. I have mentors, and when I used to do mediations, arbitrations, those type of trainings, I still speak with all of them. And what I will say, the biggest thing I want to take away from is don't be afraid to let people go that aren't benefiting your life and your life goals. A lot of people, especially when I hear from undergraduate students, feel the need to try to keep a relationship alive based on your history of high school or what you've gone through in undergraduate. But ultimately, if it becomes a burden to you, the only responsibility you have to yourself is to succeed. So don't be afraid to put yourself first and let things go if you need to, if it's not helping you.
Thank you. I appreciate you ending with that and sharing that, because I think oftentimes there's the misconception that we have to maintain relationships. But again, it's a two-way street, right? If the other person isn't, and it's okay to, end something for your own well-being. So that's important. And then also the fact that you talked about mentorship is important, because I think oftentimes we're not socializing a lot of folks of color on the importance of mentorship, but that you are able to share about mentorship is critical, because this is a time where folks can also be looking for mentors. So looking at you or Kristopher, anyone on campus as potential mentors is important, right? Perfect. So I'm gonna have an opportunity to talk to both of you, because we have one more question that's really going to be about the advice you would give to undergrad students, or like the advice you would give yourself if you were an undergrad. But before we end with my question, I wanted to kind of bring you both back in order to kind of touch on some of the topics that you both shared, and give you an opportunity if there's anything else that you think would be important for our students to know in regards to how to navigate, or how do you become resilient when you are navigating issues that might be because of their identity. Because I think that's going to be important to see if you can share some tips or some information on how do you as a person, how do you become resilient, or how do you navigate your own emotional well-being when someone does make a statement or say something and it's, rooted probably at your identity? I'm kind of going off script a little, I know. And then it's open to whoever wants to share.
You're giving me those eyes, Chris, like you want me to share. So I'll say, don't let how someone treats you deter you from the overall goal of whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. So what I can say is I don't think I've ever experienced blatant racism or discrimination. I can say I've experienced subtle. And what I do is I bring awareness to it, to myself, and I keep an eye on that person or persons, and I watch how they move. And I say, okay, this person is not an ally for me. I know when I interact with this person or persons, I need to keep it strictly professional. They're not on my side. They're not going to help me. But I'm not going to let this person's perception of me deter me from my goal, which is to provide the best guidance that I can for this campus community. And so if you can find a way to let it go so that you can be your best self, but also use whoever can be your support system to share with them that experience. I think it's important to share that it occurred with someone you trust. Then I think you'll be able to move forward. I think I get concerned when I hear people, especially in the Ombudsman's office, let that hinder them from whatever progress you're trying to make, because then they have the power over you. They won. So for me, I like to say, I don't truly know if I believe in the zodiac things, but I'm a Scorpio. So like I have vengeful tendencies, right? But how I react to things is, okay, this is how you're going to treat me. More vengeful people are like, I'm going to get back at you. I'm going to do all these things. But for me, I'm going to beat you by being successful. If I have to do it here, if I have to do it somewhere else, I'm going to show you how great I am. And that's what I do.
Great. Using that energy instead of letting the energy overwhelm you and overcome you, but using it as a strategy to excel and be successful. I think that's a great approach, and thank you. Kristopher, any comments on anything in regards, even emotionally, or self-care after a situation where you may experience, some kind of microaggression or something discriminatory? Like, how do you overcome it?
Yeah, I would say I agree with a lot of what Chanelle said. Definitely don't let like the hate or even an education of others in their comments really deter you from your goals, or really break yourself or your spirit and your emotional well-being. Lean on your support systems. And if you are fortunate enough to really have a space where you can come to and openly discuss those experiences with someone, whether they be, like maybe a student group of others that share your same identity, or like I'll share the example for me. Like I know I could go to like Staff and Faculty of Color Association and really go to any of those members for advice, or have them be a sounding board to really help me get that off my chest and really feel supported, heard, and at the end of the day, overall emotionally well. So I would say find that safe space for you that will let you kind of heal from that and be well and get you back on track to meet your goals and focus on yourself.
Thank you. Thank you both. I think that's really concrete information for folks who, again, might be in those spaces, when they're volunteering, doing internship, doing their work, or even in classes, right? So I think it's important to know that, these things may happen and they might be very overt, but for some folks, it might be coverts or it might be a microaggression, right? So it's important, again, to get that off your chest, or get that validation, like you all mentioned, and connecting with your support system. So that's helpful information, I think. So even, right now thinking about it, so I'll put the last question, and then if you all have any other, if you're open to taking any questions from the folks that are attending, I encourage you folks, if you have any particular questions for Chanelle and Kristopher, if you want to put it in the chat, if we have time, we'll get to it. But what advice would you give to undergraduate students? So what advice, like, to yourself, like what advice would you give in order to navigate school right now? College students need support, and if you were back in college at this time, what kind of advice would you give yourself?
I would definitely say reach out and connect with the various different resources amongst campus. Find a mentor or someone who's going to help push and support you in your endeavors and really care about yourself and your future. Definitely get involved with something on campus, whether it be working or a club or organization or volunteer work. It definitely does pay off and gives you skills that you could use for your career, and it helps to support and helps to create a great support system for you. And just recognize and understand the sky is always the limit. You can do anything you set your mind to. And there's tons of resources across campus and different departments and or staff that really want to see you succeed. So tap into us.
Thank you. Chanelle?
I would say don't feel pressure from your peers to do things that you don't want to do. I'll share that my first semester really of college, I socialized a lot, and that cost me my GPA. And so the second semester I had to pivot. I had to come up with a plan. And that plan was to change my major because I was not going to go to school past 4 years. I wasn't doing that. I was graduating. And so I had to change. I was going to be pre-med biology. I had to change it to psychology because I set myself back. And then I had to, so that I can stay on track, I had to take summer classes. And so that decision to socialize more than I normally would in one semester cost me more money, and it exerted more effort on my end to complete a goal where if I just said no, if I just stuck to what I know, which is me being an introvert and me wanting to be by myself on the weekends and really study and be prepared, then I would have been better off. So just don't let anyone else influence your decisions, and be true to yourself and move forward the way you need to move forward to be successful, because it is hard. And you're going to be successful only if you're persistent, because you're going to get a lot of no's, but eventually you're going to get a yes. And all you need is one yes to propel you forward. And as you start getting that momentum, you're going to see you only have the capacity to do a certain amount of things. So just make sure you pick and choose wisely with that as you move forward. And don't apologize for things that you don't want to do.
Thank you. That sounds great advice. That's really helpful. And, it reminds me, I always think of, things don't happen overnight. It's people, again, like you said, you have to be persistent, right? We didn't, get the light. We didn't get computers. It took a lot of people repetition, right? So sometimes we're afraid of that. So I'm glad you reminded us of that, which is important. So I know that we have one question from the chat. What made you both choose the career paths you did? And then do you have any advice for graduating seniors who are looking for jobs and entering the workforce? So 2 questions here. You can answer either or both.
I would say my career path, I really learned about it as an undergraduate student. What could a career in student affairs or a career at a higher education could be. I learned of that in my undergraduate federal work study position. And so that was very rewarding for me and made me want to remain in the field and really, continue to give back to the community, to a campus. And so that even made me push me to want to go to graduate school for the study of the field. And so it just kind of happened, the work study job that I was fortunate to have within the Students First Center as an undergrad, that really exposed me to that and pushed me into that. Advice I would give to graduating seniors who are entering the workforce would be, this could be a kind of, confusing time where it's a lot of different emotions as you're kind of wrapping up your senior year, but reach out to the resources across campus, such as like Career Center and your mentors, to really get your resumes and your cover letters right, and start applying, and don't be discouraged, because you may apply to a good amount of positions, and again, it could be kind of confusing, emotional, just because it's a lot of different emotions as you're prepping to go into the real world.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. Actually, there's one in the chat specifically for Chanelle. So I'll probably give you this one, Chanelle. How did you feel when you switched majors? Did you get any negative comments, or how did it go?
I think I can actually combine these two.
Okay.
If you would like me to. Let's
yes.
see. So back in middle school, I told you I was a busy kid. So in middle school, I was taking classes at Virginia Commonwealth University to be a genetics counselor. And so I love biology, still do. And so that was my goal. When I went into undergraduate at ODU, I said, I'm doing biology. I'm on track to be a genetics counselor. This is what I'm doing. No one's going to stop me, get out of my way, so on and so forth. And so when instead of getting A's and B's my first semester, I still got a 3.0, but I could have done better, because I got a couple of C's. I didn't know about the whole rate my professor thing. For the first time in my life, I decided to not do my research, and that I never made that mistake ever again. And so I felt like I failed personally. I didn't get that feedback from anyone else. My family didn't feel that way. My mom still to this day keeps saying, you sure you don't want to be an accountant? You would be great. And I'm like, it's one thing to be good at something, but it's another thing to have a passion for something. Would I be a great accountant? Sure. I've done the job several times, but is that my passion? No, I will use that to balance my own personal checkbook. And so they supported the decision, and I think they supported the decision, one, because they knew my main goal was to get out in 4 years. What I will say, I'm very great at school, very successful at it. If school was free, I would continue getting degrees. Because it's not free, and I have to take out loans, and you have to worry about taking an exam, and also what are you going to eat for dinner, that stress along with everything else, it puts me in a very depressive state each time I do it. And I don't talk to people, I don't socialize, I barely pick up the phone from my parents and stuff, and they know that. And so that was their concern. And so they said, whatever you need to do to get out to 4 years, we'll support it. And because every time I make a mistake, I don't just go to people and say, or I didn't just go to them and say, oh crap, I sort of messed up, I need to change my degree. I said, this is what I did wrong, and this is what I plan to do to fix it. Can you help support me? Of course. And they did. They paid for my summer classes at the junior college, and I was back on track for sophomore year. So it was my own personal failure, but again, sometimes you need those to learn from it and not make that mistake again moving forward.
Great, thank you. That's really important. And I think, again, going back and asking for the support, right? Because I think sometimes we feel like we don't, or like we should be able to do it on our own, but it's also important to know that we can ask folks for it. I know that there was a couple of other quick questions that came up. So do you see yourself where you're at 10 years ago? And then how do you maintain the relationships, connections with previous mentors, peers, despite distance and time passing? So that could be either of you. So did you see yourself, where did you, maybe, I don't know, did you see yourself where you're at 10 years ago? So where you were 10 years ago to where you are now, I think is the question. Right? Yes. Okay. I'm getting a nod. So from 10 years ago to now, how have you maintained those relationships, those connections with those mentors, peers? The distance passing, how is that something that you've navigated?
I'll go, Chris, or unless you want to go. I don't want to dominate, but funny story. So California is the 5th state that I've lived in. And I will disclose I'm 33 years old. So just imagine what I looked like when I was younger. Every time I move, I go through my phone, and this is not just moving to a different state. I've moved like every 2 years within states and stuff. Every time I move, I go through my phone, and with my capacity, I say, okay, who in this phone do I actually talk to? Who in this phone can provide me value, and what do I want to continue the maintenance of moving forward? Because I'm either beneficial to them or they're beneficial to me. And it's going to sound harsh, but if you don't make the cut, I delete you, because it's a way of me removing the pressure to maintain a way, and it's helpful for me. And so that's that part. How I maintain the people that stay in the phone is if I can meet with them in some work capacity. So like I have a lot of ombuds friends. I like schedule it like on a Zoom, because there's one thing I won't miss, and that's anything work related. So if I can get you in some kind of work capacity, we're golden. The other people, it has to be more with phone calls, and I'm just transparent. I said, I'm the type of person to where I'm probably not going to just pick up the phone and just talk to you all the time. I don't have that kind of time. I really don't. But I'm always here for you when you need me, and you might get a random phone call from me when I need you. And so I need low maintenance relationships, and that slowly builds into something. So if there's an understanding of the type of friendship that you need and what both parties need to be beneficial, then it works. And so I do not have any high maintenance friends. I have a lot of friends, but none of them are high maintenance because of that. And then for the 10-year part, yes and no. So as a kid, I was planning my whole life as an adult. And I said, I'm going to be successful. And I thought it was going to be in a corporate environment. But the thing about it is, when you're a kid and you go around and you're thinking you're so smart and you have everything planned out, when you're applying for these jobs, and I thought because I had a degree coming out of undergraduate and because of how smart I was and how strategic I was going to get a job very easily. Now I did. I had a job lined up 2 days after I graduated. And so just imagine moving and graduating and all that stuff. But was it my dream job? No, it was like an accounting job that I needed to get. But it propelled me forward, and it gave me options. And I think that's the most important thing I hope you all take away, is never make a decision that puts you in a bind where you're limited. The more options you give yourself, the higher probability you have of succeeding.
Thank you. Thank you, Chanelle. I appreciate it. And I know that we're almost at time, but I want to be able to give Kristopher the opportunity to share a little bit. And we have a couple of, I think, 2 more questions in the chat. So if you all are willing to give us an extra, 10 minutes of your time, that would be great.
Yeah. So 10 years ago, I did really imagine I would or want to have a master's degree. I definitely didn't expect it to be in higher education, because I didn't know what that was, like a field of study 10 years ago. I was still in high school at that time. How do I maintain relationships and connections? I really like what Chanelle said about just kind of, relationships being a two-way street, because I agree with that as well. If it's not really serving you in any way as well, just kind of move on from it. But fortunately, I do have a good connections and peers and mentors that I do either myself reach out to occasionally, or they reach out to me, and it really means a lot when they reach out to see how I am doing personally and professionally. So I would say, take the time here and there to send that text or send that email to reconnect and kind of be on the same page. And self-care, I would say I definitely go on like walks with my niece and my dog, and I disconnect from my email. And I definitely like to go to a lot of concerts and travel and like music events. Today I'm gonna go see Joe K, so I'm excited. I'm definitely a work hard, play hard type of person. So find that balance for you.
That's perfect. I was just going to ask you if you could talk a little bit about self-care. So I'm glad that you mentioned about music and walking, and you have a dog. So I always use my dogs for self-care. So that's great that you were able to share that, because I think oftentimes some of our students, they need to already start developing some practices of self-care. So I'm glad hopefully they took away a couple of good strategies that they can apply. So thank you for that. And then Chanelle, I know there was a specific question in regards to another Scorpio like-minded person here. This is Scorpio Power Chanelle. Was there ever an instance where you had to balance your pursuit for higher education and family and friends who don't fully support your move to higher education?
When you say move to higher education, do you mean like working, or do you mean like when I guess I got the degrees I chose or something like that?
I'm going to open it up. Moises, if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, be brave. Ask the question.
Yeah, I meant towards like the move to college, or even like I said, moving on to, working in the field specifically.
I did not get the support I was looking for when I got my master's initially from my family, only because they knew it was more. So my mom is an accountant, obviously, and we're very like, we don't overpay, strict about money, all that type of stuff. And I've inherited that. And so when I made the decision to go back and get my master's, the thought wasn't about, can I do it or can I not do it, or you would be great. It was just like, oh, we just paid off your loans. Now you're going to take out another set. And so because of that, I didn't get the initial support. But my mom also knows my drive to succeed. And I said, I know this is going to put a burden on me in terms of the loans, but I have no choice but to not succeed at this point if I do this. So I'm going to succeed. You are left with no other choice. What else are you going to do? You're either going to fail or you're going to move forward. And failure was not an option for me. So I had to do it, and I had to make it work. And now she respects that decision. She goes around telling everyone I'm an ombud, and she calls me and says she needs ombud services all the time when she gets frustrated. But that initial support that I didn't get was kind of hurtful, because it was coming from her, who is me in an older form, and we had to have that talk at some point about that.
Perfect. And then can you share at least one self-care activity, something that you do for us so we can learn from you?
I will say I used to poorly do self-care due to a recent back injury that I have, that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, possibly. I've taken that into account now more than ever. And so in the midst of all of my scheduling of everything else, I'm very into wellness now. And so before I was like, I don't want to do massages and acupuncture and wellness. I wasn't into that. I just wanted to wake up, do a workout, which would hurt my body because it's high impact, and go about my day. But when I got hurt, I started using these wellness opportunities as truly as a way to shut down and just relax. And so that's what I do now. I do acupuncture regularly. I go to the chiropractor regularly. And if I'm not doing that, I make sure that I play video games on the weekends. continue to work out, just being more mindful overall that I don't want to work to live anymore. I want to live to work and enjoy my life, because until probably about 2 years ago, I wasn't happy. I was successful, but I wasn't happy because I was trying to achieve something, and I didn't achieve what I was trying to achieve until now. And I'm the type of person where I get very hyper focused. Until I get to whatever that goal is, nothing else matters. And so now that I'm happy, I try to make sure I take trips and, make time for myself, pay it back to myself for all the hard work.
Well, thank you. Thank you both again. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us for the Firme Role Model during Black History Month, because I think this is just something of a resource that we're giving individuals, because again, we want people to be conscious of the fact that Black History Month is not just 1 month, but it's something that should be celebrated, and we should learn and educate ourselves throughout the year. And it's important to know that we've now tapped onto 2 potential mentors for some of our students and resources. And I know that there was some agreement, so maybe, I don't know if Kristopher also plays video games, because I saw you nodding, which is, I think, helpful. Finding the small things that we might take for granted and putting it and naming it to self-care is, I think, important. And I know that our students here are going to have an opportunity to watch this recording and hopefully take some knowledge, some advice that maybe they might not apply it to their lived experience right now, but it's stuff that they can carry on to the future as they grow and develop as professionals, because your identity is something that you carry it with you throughout your life, throughout your career. So it's important to get those strategies and those tips as often as we can. So thank you again. We're very excited that you were able to participate, and just wanting to remind people that do what you can this month and throughout the year to really learn and educate yourselves on all of the great work that different African Americans and Black Americans have done to contribute to not only UC Merced, but also to the world. And so it is something that is important, and we have to value each other. And thank you again for being here with us. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and enjoy a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good week.
Thank you, everyone.